In this word problem, we're going to be finding the percent of a number and using two different strategies and talking about which one is the most efficient way to solve this to help your kids to work smart. There are 245 students in sixth grade. If 40% of them ride the bus to school, how many sixth graders do not ride the bus to school? The information that we have is the total number of students in sixth grade, and we're also given that 40% of those students ride the bus to school. And we have to figure out how many of those sixth graders do not ride the bus to school. So the information that we're given is that a part of that, of the total kids, 40% of the total kids ride the bus to school. And the first thing I'm going to do is figure out the percent of students who do not ride the bus to school. So I'm going to take 100%, which is the total, and subtract from that 40%. 40% is the number of students who ride the bus to school. That's the percentage. And then I'm going to find out what percent of those students that do not ride the bus to school. So I know that this is 60%. Now we just have to figure out what number that is. 60% of 245 is what? That's what we're trying to figure out. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to solve it using a proportion. And this is the way that a lot of students go when they see a percentage in a problem, is that they want to solve it using a proportion, and that's completely fine. So I know that I'm going to use a 60% because that's what I'm trying to figure out, 60% of the 245. So 60 over 100 is equivalent to that 60%. And I'm going to show that X represents the number of students who do not ride the bus to school. And that would be X over 245. So this is a total number of students here. And this is the number of students that do not ride the bus to school. And what the kids can do now is they can do some cross multiplication. And so they get 245 times 60. And they get 14,700. And then they divide by 100. And so 14,700 divided by 100. And we know that that's just 147 students. And they can do that. Okay, your kids could also just set it up and just do the division this way. But we know what happens when we are dividing by that 100. That's one way to do this problem. I like to do the problem using the different equivalent forms of 60%. I use 6/10. And I multiply it using the decimal form. So 245, because we're finding the part of the number, part of the total. 245 times 6/10. And you still get 147 students. I like the second method better because I think that it is more efficient to solve it this way, because you make fewer errors when you are calculating with smaller numbers. Usually that's the experience I've had with students. But students don't have to use 6/10 in the form of a decimal. Students can solve this using 6 over 10 times 245 as a fraction. They could use another equivalent form of 60%, which is 60 over 100 times 245. There are so many different ways that kids can solve this problem, but it just needs to make sense to them. 3/5 times 245 also gives them, all of these give them 147 students. When students think flexibly, then that opens their world up to being able to solve problems in different ways. So if kids are struggling with these, really want to just break these down and understand what it is, what information they're giving them, so that they're able to determine what strategy they're going to use. And so they don't want to always rely on a single strategy, because sometimes it's easier just to do it in a different way, but they have to understand the problems to be able to do these in different ways.